welcome to the Back Podcast, Australia's favourite gaming podcast. As voted on by us, the hosts of the Back Podcast, Australia's favourite gaming podcast. It's Monday, the 28th of March, 2022. I'm Nick Richardson, and today I'm joined by Peter Burns.
Hello.
And Back Pocket's very own Stephanie Dixon.
Been a while, but I'm back.
Steph, for those who haven't watched the show, and no, I won't go into the normal spiel. How are you? Welcome back to the show. Well, normally it's like I introduce a random person, but you're one of the pockets.
That's true. I am a pocket. I am one of 4 pockets that sits on the set usually. One of 3 pockets that is here now, and I would say the only pocket with boobs.
I'm getting there. I'll tell you what, I got to start running again. But other than that, we're very excited to have you on the show, Steph, to talk about video games. And we had to get you on for this episode. It will be revealed later why. But there's only one person that really could talk with the excitement, the depth, the level of obsession about one of these stories that you have.
Yes, well, I wonder what it is.
What could it possibly be? It's about rugby union. That's what it's about.
That's it.
But I'll
That's
tell you
my
what this is actually about. This is about giving you a great video game news episode, and we can't do that without our good friends at Pixel Beans Coffee, who have come on board the Back Podcast all month. You get your Back Podcast fix once a week, but you can get your coffee fix daily thanks to Pixel Beans Coffee. Pete, have a sip of that. Fresh brew.
I think I'm on Rainbow Road at the moment.
Look, it's just...
What a name.
I think... now, look, I'm going to say something that is completely incorrect and probably slanderous, and they'll be really angry about. I'll say they could not actually change the flavor of any of the beans, but they've got such descriptive names that mentally I think they all taste different.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Rainbow Road compared to Flawless Victory just feel inherently different, even though it's probably just all from the one bean vat.
Does it give you sufficient star power to get through your day?
It sure does. But for me, it's really it's just a nice thing to imagine the Rainbow Road going all the way through my system.
Okay.
Good. All right. I'm glad that's right. The Rainbow Road is not so rainbow at the end of that road. But I'll tell you what is at the end of this rainbow, and that is a PlayStation 5 that you can win thanks to Pixel Beans. For every 250 grams of beans purchased from Pixel Beans Coffee, customers will get 1 entry into the competition to win a PS5. Head to pixelbeans.com.au and use the code BACKPOCKET when you check out to get 20% off your purchase. So you can get 20% off your coffee, and for every 250 grams of beans, you get an entry into the competition. You buy a kilo of beans, that's 4 entries, baby, and you got a kilo of coffee with 20% off. Use the code BACKPOCKET. Everybody wins. Everybody wins except for Pete's toilet. Okay, let's get started because this news is not like itself. Pete. They're going to be so angry that we talked about poo for so long. The backup is presented by Evil Spy Boy, one of our top Stitch patrons, and the best evil person we know. I did that the wrong way around because I just read Evil Spy Boy. It's presented by the best evil person we know. Whoever named it Mouthful Mode, because now I need to explain that to my kids when they play it. Mouthful Mode. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing to have. Sorry, I do mean Evil Spy Boy. Get your exclamation mark. Spy Boy's out in the chat. Thanks for his generous Patreon support. He's bringing you the backup, and he's hoping you bring the generous Food Bank Australia, who provide regular breakfast to more than 132,000 students at schools around the country. Donate at foodbank.org.au. There's a link in Nightblock right now, and head to tasteofmultifish.com for more information about Evil Spy Boy and his proclivities. Okay, let's back up. Look at the biggest stories of the week as voted on by us, the hosts of the Backup, where we back up and look at the biggest stories of the week. Steph, you are our guest. Can you please start us off with a story that this week made you back up and go, hey, that's a pretty big story?
What? A new Witcher game is announced? That's crazy.
What?
What? Oh my gosh. I woke up and I rolled over and I grabbed my phone groggily like I always do. And when I saw this story, I was just like a little tear just rolled from my very, very sleepy eye. We don't know much about it yet. We just know that they have announced that we've known that they were going to make another game in the sort of Witcher universe at some point. They were never ruled that out. They had said that it was probably not going to be about Geralt, or at least you wouldn't be playing as Geralt. Some speculated whether we'd be playing as Ciri, maybe. But what we know is that based on the image that they've given us, it's either going to be set around a character who follows the school of the cat, the Witcher school of the cat, or the school of the lynx. So a lot of people are saying lynx because this doesn't actually look like the cat school Witcher. So there's a number of different Witcher schools that you can train under as a Witcher. Geralt was a school of the wolf. White wolf. There's also the school of the cat, the school of the griffin, the bear, the viper, the manticore, and the crane, and they all have different approaches to witchering.
Imagine getting the crane.
In a good,
That's like,
are you saying that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Nah, that's shit.
Yeah,
It's not even it's not even a great bird. Like it's just like bird under wolf for
But I
sure.
think when you
but
think
then it's
about-
like a bad bird.
But when you think about like sort of like martial arts and stuff like that, I feel like the crane has a pretty good association of being a very elegant, precise creature, and that's probably ties into their thinking.
I just feel like those legs are so vulnerable. They're just so skinny.
Snap them in two.
Yeah, you could snap them in two. I know that the Witcher devs actually came out and confirmed that it is a lynx, that medallion is a lynx.
Yeah, I guess my thing is just like, why would you have a school of the lynx when there is already a school of the cat? Like, how is that going to be different? So I'm kind of wondering if it's maybe like, because there's a lot of kind of backstory around the different Witcher schools, and the school of the cat at least was more of a kind of assassin-y, stealthy approach to witchering, and they use sort of different weapons. I remember like in The Witcher 2, there was like a cinematic with Letho, and he had like two sort of stiletto daggers that he fought with, and I thought
Was he cat?
Letho, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Now I have like a frame of reference.
Yeah. So cat school witchering would be quite different, but then I feel like if it's going to be more assassin-y, then it's going kind of down an assassin-y Creed route, which feels very overdone. So maybe,
I mean, it could be going more a stealthy route as opposed to, and I guess Assassin's Creed used to be stealth. I don't really think of it as a stealth game anymore, but Geralt was very much like, Geralt was just like big dick swinging that sword around, coming into town and just like letting everyone know he was there all the time. Whereas if you are more like sneaky, daggery, shooty, poisony sort of stuff, that could be cool.
Yeah. But since a lynx is a cat or just a big cat, I kind of wondered if maybe the lynx is some kind of like new evolution of the cat school witches who've taken on a more like, I don't know, aggressive approach to cat school fighting, or maybe it's just a new thing altogether and they just couldn't think of another cool animal like the crane.
School of the hippo.
yeah. School of the
Dangerous
quokka.
animal. School of the quokka.
I saw
School of the
from
salmon.
a pseudonym in the chat.
I also saw someone, it was Rattlesnake, said School of Fraser Crane. Now that
like
would be
that.
an interesting Witcher game.
Yeah,
you'd be fighting with wit.
Totally, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually have a fight. He wants to fix them. He wants to kill them. He's like, no, you can be saved. It's okay.
Yeah. So the other kind of speculation that people have had is sort of, which character will you be playing as? Is it going to be a character that is sort of known to us? Is it going to be where in the timeline would it be set? A couple of people have thought, what if we're creating our own Witcher? Would it be like a character creator situation?
Oh, yeah.
But that to me would say you would choose your own school.
medallion.
The fact that they've shown us that it's School of the Lynx, that tells me that it's going to be like a pre-existing character that we're going to be playing as, and we won't get to create our own.
Yeah, that's a good read on that. Also, I feel like that's and maybe they're zigging when we expect them to zag, but The Witcher to me as a series, because they've said previously most likely it won't be Geralt that we're following, but Geralt was such a great protagonist because he really was a very strong character, even though he didn't have a ton of depth. It was like you were playing as Geralt, you weren't playing as you as Geralt. So to make your own character kind of feels like whenever you do that, you're letting go of the characterization around the game, and you're kind of going, okay, this world is now the character that you're going out as explored, as opposed to like necessarily a tale that you're going through. You can have a character customizer of like, here's what your Geralt looks like, but if you are really going like you're starting off as like, I can name my character whatever I want. That doesn't feel like what I think of when I think of The Witcher.
Yeah, I guess it could be more like a Commander Shepard situation where it's like you're playing Commander Shepard and Commander Shepard exists in this universe and has these interactions with people, but you're kind of just choosing how you want to play those scenes out and what the person looks like and that kind of thing. So that could be kind of cool. But I agree. I think I'd probably just prefer to play as an existing character and follow their story. I would just like the character to be sort of significantly different from Geralt himself, because it needs to set itself apart quite substantially, I think, to feel fresh, because there's a lot of Witcher out there already, many hours of Witcher.
Yeah. Do you think stepping away from the core story that is already written is going to be too big a challenge? I think half the reason why I enjoy these games is because the fantasy feels so developed. It doesn't feel like it's being made up on the spot. It feels like Geralt walks into a situation that existed before him as opposed to existing just for him.
Yeah.
And the problem with things like even Mass Effect, which I think are great, but stumbled on that sometimes, of being like, why is this one dude? Of course, you get to play the hero, but Geralt isn't really like the one in his fantasy story. He's just a very effective tool in his story. Whereas Shepard is the one, right? It's like Shepard becomes the thing that the Reapers are coming to kill. Like they have a vendetta against your character. The world turns against your character. And I feel like that's a less effective thing than the Witcher's, and I love Mass Effect, but I feel like the Witcher's world feels more realized.
Yeah, I think it's also a different landscape now, though, that the TV show exists and is so popular, like which is kind of further developing that original story for people, so people are really familiar with it. But it also kind of showed us that there were aspects of that story that that weren't really fleshed out in the books that could be told through a different medium. We didn't really get Yennefer's whole backstory. Like we had an understanding of what happened to her from a few kind of throwaway lines, but in the TV show, you kind of go back and you go through all of that with her from her perspective and stuff. So there's kind of avenues there, I think, to sort of stay within the existing story and show a bit more and tell the story in a more elaborate way. By kind of focusing on those smaller elements. The other thing I think too is that they have, they've said that they are working with Kofsky as well. So he might just have other kind of stories in his brain, or things that he never got on paper, or maybe new books that he's been writing, or who knows. I think that everyone kind of famously knows that he kind of got shafted out of the original deal by making the wrong choice. He sort of chose a payout rather than a percentage of game sales, because he's like, video games, those don't make any money. And he was obviously very wrong and was a bit salty about it. So I think they've cut him a new deal on this new game, and he'll be involved in the narrative aspect, I think. So there's that to kind of consider as well.
Yep. I think it's really interesting with that, of having the creator of the series so tied into, or even tied in at all to a game. Like, I can't really think of any other properties where it's based on the thing and the person who came up with that thing is it all working with a company to make it, which I think, to Pete's point, sort of lends that depth of world. I am curious what. Oh, sorry, go.
Almost a direct reference is George R.R. Martin working as a scriptwriter on the first few seasons of Game of Thrones, and then he left.
Yeah, true. I was more talking about video games, but
yeah, totally. But like, absolutely, like someone who created the source material, guiding. And the strongest parts of it.
Strongest parts of it, totally, yeah. I am curious what a new Witcher looks like. I'm really excited for that. I really love Witcher 3. I have not finished it, but I think that the interesting thing about The Witcher is at least the third one, which is the biggest one, it doesn't feel like it did anything that we hadn't seen before. And Steph, like, correct me if I'm wrong. It wasn't really. I feel like it wasn't really revolutionary in any way, in the same way as you can look at like a Breath of the Wild, where it's like, oh, the idea of like climb anything, or that one like sellable thing, except for the storytelling. The storytelling was so strong, but we've seen strong storytelling before. It was just really, really strong in this, and so many of the side quests were great and that sort of thing. Do you think that it's enough to continue with a fourth game of or like a fourth series, a second series of this, just doing more of the same, or do you think that this is their chance to add something that they haven't played with before in the series before?
So hard to know, because I would love to get an insight into what the state of CD Projekt Red is like at the moment, because after Cyberpunk, they would be so shaken from the whole experience of putting so much into that game and innovating and trying something new, and actually being a game that didn't feel that original. And obviously they had a lot of problems with, performance and the game not really being, ready for consoles, current gen or previous gen. So it's hard to know what their focus will be. They know everyone loves The Witcher. They know that it's only continued to grow in popularity, and they're going to be wanting to give people what they want. I hope that doesn't stop them from wanting to try new things and take risks and surprise us with what they do. My fear is that they will be so concerned with pleasing people with the thing that they know that they love, that they'll want to kind of play it safe and give people kind of Witcher 4 that feels very much in the vein of Witcher 3. But I think they're using Unreal Engine instead of Red Engine this time, and a new character. So yeah, I hope. I think it probably is enough in the same way that Horizon Forbidden West is enough for people who loved Horizon Zero Dawn, but I think that it would be so much better and so much cooler, and it would set CDP up, I think, so much better for the future of them as a studio outside of The Witcher if they did something with this that felt really fresh and different.
Yeah, and you mentioned Cyberpunk. Obviously, it has its issues and whatever, but the plot was original and was good. But the character stuff was brilliant in Cyberpunk. Character dialogue, character interaction, the writing was really, really like subtle and nuanced in a world that was not. So it was like this really stark thing that you would get into these really emotional conversations and they would land. And the direction of character interactions and stuff was better in that than it was in The Witcher 3 as well. So I think they're just getting better and better as storytellers. So if they end up with a good story, I think they'll fucking smash it.
And as you mentioned, Steph, it's also they've moved from their own engine and they're using Unreal, which is a huge get for Epic as well. I just feel like this is like one of those games where you're just constantly going to be seeing the sort of like look at the draw distance we can put in this thing, and look at like it would just be, because the 3 was a technical masterpiece visually, and yeah, like Epic score a huge win by getting this game on there as well. I'm excited for this. I'm super keen. We don't have any more information about like when it's going to drop, and like I'm sure it's still a very long time away. But normally you would think, have they learned their lesson from Cyberpunk and just don't start your hype cycle so early?
Yeah.
But then also it's like maybe they need a new hype cycle. They need to basically reset the narrative about their company, even though they're still working on Cyberpunk. They're still working on trying to reset the narrative of that game. But I think it's important for them to be like, we are something other than the last couple of years. Yeah,
totally.
So
that would be my move if I was running that company. I'd be, as much as it feels very transparent, I'd be like, guys, let's get that announcement ASAP so people know that this is what we're doing, and while we're working on this, because otherwise everything that they've done to kind of build up the name of CD Projekt was kind of crumbling under the weight of all of Cyberpunk's issues. So I think the sooner that they can shift people's focus onto the shiny new thing, the better.
Yeah.
And
They've
it
definitely
makes sense.
started a trend back towards being in public favor, and like the latest patches for Cyberpunk have done a decent chunk of that. It's still like the biggest problems with that game are the engine, for sure. So stepping away from it, I think, is just like the headline that they want to share,
The right call, yeah.
and the fact that they're working on more Witcher, another just really boon headline for them. So
Yeah, it's I can't think of another game, maybe with the exception of something
Anthem.
from BioWare. Yeah, of going the amount of pressure on this, not only because of Cyberpunk, but also because of Witcher. Like you came off this run of 3 critically acclaimed games. You need to make a new one of that. It needs to be different but the same and all those things. And you've got the Cyberpunk burden as well. Like there's just so much writing on this. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but also very exciting. Pete,
Yep.
what story made you back up this week?
All right, so no smirking for just a moment. I need to get through the information, and then
we can have
laugh.
opinions.
Yeah. Halo, the TV show, has set viewership records for Paramount Plus. No hard numbers have been offered to back up Paramount Plus's claim, but Deadline points out that if true, this means Halo exceeds the previous record set by Yellowstone prequel 1883, which drew 4.9 million viewers. While it remains to be seen how many of those viewers will stick around after their 1-month trial expires, because Xbox Game Pass came with a Paramount Plus trial, so a good incentive to jump in to celebrate the show's launch. We don't know how many people are going to stick around. And season 2 has already been greenlit. Now, the show was pretty average. I wouldn't call it absolute trash, that first episode, but it was not great. Opinions?
I've been fighting with people on Twitter about Halo for like 24 hours for some reason. I don't know why. I thought it was also super average, and I have no emotional investment in it at all. But I guess I've seen a lot of like game to TV adaptations, and I've seen a lot of book to TV adaptations. And my kind of stance on them is that I understand that you need to make, and actually believe that you need to make pretty significant changes to it in order to make it work on that new platform. Because I also think it needs to appeal to a broader audience than just people who like that game, or it just can't survive. And so you kind of need to go into it being like, all right, there are some decisions being made here that are being made to fit the platform that it is. I think it like far from does the franchise justice. I think it really they spent, I think, how much an episode? 10 million?
It's 200 million total that they did on the first season.
I think 10 million in an episode. I heard,
20
but
million in it.
yeah, it's something crazy. But it still looks so horribly budget, and it's so hard to do sci-fi well. But I feel like, that's kind of one of the biggest things that immediately is hard to get past. But I feel like a lot of people are really focusing on Master Chief as a character and how he is being portrayed. And while I understand it's difficult because Master Chief is kind of meant to be this sort of faceless, everyman symbol of humanity who doesn't really express much in the way of emotion, I find that very difficult to connect with in a TV show. I think when you're playing as that character in a game, you kind of feel more of a connection and you're more invested in that character. But when you're kind of watching it on screen, very, very difficult. And a lot has been made of the fact that spoilers, what there is if you don't want this, but he removes his helmet in the first episode, which is, famously Chief never does. And a lot of people
that's not true either. The Halo fans are dumb as shit. He has his helmet off in every game except Halo 3 at some point. You don't see his face.
You don't see his
This is the first time you see his face, but it's not like the Mandalorian of like he never shows his face is like a character thing about the Chief. It's just that they never bothered showing it in the game because they want you to be Chief.
Totally.
Except Halo 4 shows you eyes, and it's like he's very much generic white soldier dude.
Yeah, totally. So for me, like I feel like, and there've been a lot of comparisons to Mandalorian, being like, they got, Mandalorian never takes off his helmet. I mean, he does at one point, but like for the most part, he has it on and he's kind of acting through it. And I feel like it's kind of a different show. It has a different tone, and there's a lot of kind of quirky Star Wars characters kind of doing a lot of heavy lifting around him, which allows for kind of long shots to hold on Mando's face while he's kind of doing subtle emoting through all of that armor. Whereas I don't think the Halo show has that same tone and can allow for that. For me, I just, with it feeling so dry, the moment he took his helmet off, I was like, okay, I instantly can connect with a person, and I feel like I am invested in what's happening here. So I kind of understand that those changes are being made for television. I'm not saying that they're necessarily the right choices. I just understand that why they're being made. And so much of the vehemence around these things is people being frustrated that it's not exactly like the thing that they know. And I just don't think it can be.
I think it's safe to just ignore that crowd.
Okay.
Because the people that don't like the show because of that are dumb. Because there's many other reasons to not like the show in terms of how it is made as a television show.
Totally.
As a storytelling experience. Fucking get over the fact that you see a dude's face. It's the only way to tell a story on screen.
Yeah.
In an interesting way for this character who is just generic soldier man.
Yeah.
Nick, you've watched the first ep?
It's just so boring. Its biggest flaw. Like, it's just so aggressively boring. It doesn't have an identity. It doesn't have a visual look that compare it. The comparison to Mandalorian to me is like Mandalorian was a Western. That's like you use the tropes of a Western to be able to tell this story in the same way that Star Wars has before. But it visually looked amazing because it had a style, it had a tone, it was bold in terms of like the way it told its story. There's nothing interesting about the way that Halo is telling its story. Its story is inherently uninteresting to me. Because I don't really know, like, it's just like fucking aliens turn up and then the military need to fight the aliens is very broadly what's going on here. That's totally uninteresting. It is just, I tuned out so many, I had to keep rewinding to go like, okay, what, like focus. Nick, all you need to do is sit here and look at a screen. You just need to look at a screen. That's all I'm asking of my body is to look at colorful images as they flash in front of my eyes. And I kept looking away and just like going, oh, this is so aggressively ordinary. It's not even so bad it's good. It's I don't even know if
middling, right? Like,
I don't even know if it's bad. I think it's just boring.
I don't think it is
I just
bad.
think it's like flat and blah.
It feels a bit like I would have thought that by now we've kind of figured out how to create sci-fi worlds in a believable way. But this kind of everybody wearing like cool variations of the same outfit with the same 5 fabrics and the same 5 colors. Like, I understand that maybe it's like a standard issue outfit for this outpost, but then they'd be wearing a uniform, right? They wouldn't be wearing like, it looks like, some kind of up and coming designers or like some student designers fall winter collection, with these 5 fabrics that they got, from Spotlight or whatever. And it pulls you so out of it because it feels very panto. And I feel like all of the kind of themes and stuff feel so kind of cheesy and, they're just kind of broadcasting these very generic themes when I think what is interesting is if you're going to explore Master Chief as a character and how he came to be and all that kind of stuff, is we kind of zero in on that and then kind of have the politics of the world kind of come in around that. But it feels like it's just the first episode is setting things up in such a boring way. It's hard to feel invested going forward.
Yeah, I think they I would hope that because I definitely didn't hate it. I was just really kind of underwhelmed and getting irked by little things like the rebels at the base shooting at the elites with the mounted gun and then not doing anything, and then Master Chief uses the same gun and it's like slays them. It's like weird world logic things like the costume design. I think the set was okay. This like mining town set. I think most of the sets were okay. And there were other things like the woman pushes through a metal. She opens up a metal hatch, and it's so clearly made of plastic. Like it's painted to look metal, and it is just so light. Things like that shouldn't be disrupt from a good quality thing. You just notice when you're like, I don't want to look at what it's trying to make me look at because I'm a bit bored by it. They definitely went action heavy at the start. I think there is a good story at the back, but they haven't brought it to the foreground in an interesting way yet.
Yeah, I mean, it is super early. Obviously, it's just the pilot, so I'll watch a couple more to see, because I don't want to be so dismissive of something where it's like I saw the first episode and then I'm just like, it's horrible. But at the same time, I think that it just feels like there's no point in making this other than you got the license for Halo. It just doesn't feel like someone went, I have a story that I want to tell about Halo, and therefore, like, a television series is the best way to put this forward. So it's just, I don't know why it exists. That's what it really comes down to, and that's sad. If it doesn't have an identity and it doesn't have something unique to say, then why are you making this thing other than just, we will make money because people will watch Paramount Plus? So depressing, but a little inevitable, I feel like, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we all good? Are we good shitting on Halo? Do we have anything else that we think do we need to dig the boot in even more?
I mean, I hope it gets better. That's all I can say.
Hope it gets better.
Performance from the young female lead was strong.
She's Australian.
She's Aussie.
Yeah.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
I love it then. I think it's great.
Shut up.
I'm a patriot.
I thought she was really solid, and everyone else was pretty fucking average.
Did you know everyone had also Raised by Wolves future mullet haircuts in this? That seems to be the new sci-fi haircut is the super short fringe and the little mullet.
Maybe because it's just very practical. Like if you're constantly maybe long at the back is a practical, but that sort of like blunt fringe, it's like it's never getting in your eyes when you're hunting, fighting, grappling. You don't, it's more of a utilitarian practical thing rather than a fashion statement. Yeah. I'll tell you what else has definitely gotten better, and that is Fortnite. And this is a thing that I feel like I keep saying, and Fortnite is a really just interesting story to me. The way it's gotten better most recently is that it had a sort of limited time game mode where they turned off building, which is something that I feel like everyone's
been saying since the start.
For so long. Like, there is no way to really compete, and I'm not talking like in an esports way, but to be competitive in Fortnite in a meaningful way unless you can wrap your head around the building. And it's a bit strange because to me the building is like a completely second kind of thing. It's such a second thing that it's a different game that I have to engage with in the middle of the shooty game. So they had this limited time mode where they turned it off. Doctor Strange, for some reason, turned off building. I don't know the exact reason why, but that's what happened.
He was trying to cast a spell and Spider-Man distracted him and then he fucked it up.
And then he fucked it up. And so, but they've compensated for the fact that building has been turned off by giving you, like speaking of Halo, there's like this Halo overshield style thing that you have instead of, so that, if you take a shot running through a field, normally you would ping up a wall, but now you can't do that. So instead you have this shield that recharges. There's some like ways to fix vehicles and stuff because you're going to be using those a lot more as well. So they've sort of like compensated for that, which I think is really interesting. But it was apparently, I'm sure that this was planned in the first place, but it's been well received enough that it's now people have found that there's going to be a just permanent mode in the future. Like one of the options in Fortnite is that you can turn off the fort, so you just play night. And I think it's so. Fortnite takes a lot of hits, and I think I think some of it is deserved. I don't like the sort of like homogenization of all culture being put into one thing.
Yeah.
intellectually, but then when the thing that I like is in it, I'm like, fuck, that's cool. So when it comes to that.
Totally.
But I think it's just so fascinating seeing the way that this, I can't think of another game that's evolved in the same degree as Fortnite. Like, you know, it was initially not even a battle royale. It moved to a battle royale. It started this like monoculture, like bring everything in. It's got the concert stuff. It drastically builds its island every season. Like, it destroys everything you know. It keeps adding new interesting mechanics. And then in this point, it's now removing things where it's like, we want people to play this who don't feel like they can engage with this fundamental thing that is also, if you remove the IP from the game, if you remove all the license deals, it's really the one thing that makes Fortnite different than most other battle royales.
Sure.
Is
For
the
sure.
building. And they've gone, no, we're happy to just be like other, because we're so confident in the thing that we do. And I'm so pro Fortnite now, and I used to be not negative Fortnite, but so uninterested in it. And now I'm just like, fuck, this game is so bold in what it's doing. And yes, you can say that they're a multi-billion-dollar company and they can achieve whatever they want. But I think the other side of that is like, there's a lot of multi-billion-dollar companies that are terrified of changing.
As good a job, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, what if the thing that we change destroys this game?
But they're not going to remove it entirely, though, right? They would just create a separate mode that you can play.
It is a separate mode. But I think, I mean, even if you think about the island being like, we changed the island. The first time they did that was huge. And that could have been like, if that island sucked, you lose a huge fan base. It's just amazing that they're managing to do this, reinvent themselves over and over again.
It's very clever. And I feel like because, I think a lot of us got frustrated with it because, it was just everywhere. It was so oversaturated in terms of content creators being so involved in it and, it being a largely kind of younger play audience. It became this sort of fringe thing that we hated to think about or talk about. But then we kind of missed a lot of those iterations and seasons of them kind of changing things and adding stuff to the game. So that by the time we jumped into it, we were like, damn, this is actually pretty fun. Totally. What they're doing is really clever and fun and smart. And I get it. Like, I see why it's so popular. But the building mechanic, it kind of reached a level where people who play this game exclusively got so good at the building element, which isn't really a function of other games in the same way. To develop those skills is really hard unless you exclusively focus on Fortnite. So it was a barrier for people, and it was certainly a barrier for me. Like, I don't build at all when I play Fortnite. I just kind of like run around and try not to die. But
totally.
The idea of a mode existing without it is really cool because I think a lot of players who rely on building will then have to think about playing in a different way. And it even changes the fact that like when you're in the world and you're kind of one of the last sort of crews left and you're sort of trying to scan the horizon and see where people are, seeing people build is a big kind of signpost to someone being in a certain location. It immediately draws your eye. It changes the game so much more than it just being something that removes a potential shield for you. It's so like true, yeah. It changes how other players will be able to identify you and see you and stuff as well. So
and also like navigation around, like they've added a lot of navigation thing. Like this last time I played, there's just Spider-Man web everywhere for whatever reason that you can use. But the idea of like being able to build stairs to bypass climbing a hill or something, that's not a thing anymore. So they need to compensate for that, and that is like that's another one of those big changes that you need to wrap your head around.
Which I feel like they've been. You're right, slowly introducing other modes of transport to kind of get you around the map quickly so that when they did kind of come to the point where they were going to create a mode without building and without ramps and all that kind of stuff, they'll be like, look, you've already learned how to use some of these other systems.
You already know all this stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Very clever, very clever. They're playing the long game for sure.
And so like for me, I don't think I'll ever be into it if I go to play a battle royale, but one of the things that it does have that I think is like quite a fundamental part of the other battle royales I play is that you can get trapped in a building. Mm-hmm. You can use it as safety, but also you can get trapped in it, and you never can in Fortnite. That's not an issue. You just bash a wall down.
Yeah.
And that stuff is still exists. You can still destroy, I believe, but you just don't collect mats to build.
Yeah, I think a big part of the world is accessing hidden like loot chests and things like that. You can hear those chests twinkling and they're in a wall or something like that. So I think they wouldn't remove the destruction element from the game and get rid of all of the fun of finding hidden things.
Yeah. So there's still that element of like cat and mouse, but when mouse runs into the little crack in the wall, it's suddenly behind you.
and mouse has the pickaxe.
And
then I guess the fun thing on that is that so many companies trying to do the metaverse thing, and it's just exhausting. And of course, Fortnite is being mentioned in that conversation, but I just think that they constantly making the decisions where I go, well, if there had to be a metaverse, I guess this is the kind of thing that I want. Like, they have been just bolting different things onto this. So Fortnite is not just this hardcore battle royale thing. There are so many modes in this game. There are so many different experiences that you can have. And I look at companies like Facebook where they're like, we want to launch this entire ecosystem that you join. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's taken this game like 6 years to get to this point organically. They're very
Let's put virtual conference rooms in Fortnite, sponsored by Facebook.
100%.
Like, keeps better.
Like, I genuinely would not be surprised if in 5 or 6 years' time, Fortnite is like Microsoft Teams, or is a social media network, or has its own internet or something, like does something where it was like, remember when this used to be just a video game and it's now so much more, because it is still just a video game, even though there are concerts and things that you can do in there. It's still like you go in there to play and run around and have fun. But there's so a world where they could add other things to this, and I would not be surprised, and they would figure out how to make it work. It's just, it's kind of
totally
crazy.
It's so interesting that the corporate kind of side of it is hard, because it does have such a young player base, and you can't have young people associating anything like corporate and businessy with the thing that they love. They would need to kind of find a way to make it separate, but using the same stuff. I feel
like if you made it a social media network in the same way that whatever fucking Twitter has now, like rooms, spaces, whatever that button is on the bottom of my Twitter app, where it's like that's like a little call room that you and your followers can talk in. You just go, okay, you've got that, but now you're at work and that's what you use instead of jumping on a Slack call. Then you just like, you fucking did it, but actually kids look at it as it's just like a built-in Discord, and all that sort of shit is just very there's a lot of potential there that I just feel like they keep stepping towards and making the right decisions, and it's kind of crazy to see a game constantly make the right decision. It's pretty rare. And then rounding out, we got a couple of announcements and delays. Something saw that Little Will, so excited for this, and I think it looks really cool too. Lego Bricktales got announced. It's coming out later this year. It's a diorama-driven puzzler that's been created by Clockstone, who made Bridge Constructor, that series. So they have a pedigree in sort of like small space building, but this Lego game looks
very specific skill set.
Totally. But it is like, am I going to give it to this people, or am I going to give it to like CD Projekt Red? I'm going to give it to the people who made Bridge Constructor.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it looks adorable. And Nitrotex points out nuts and bolts. Absolutely. Nuts and bolts was ahead of its time. People just hated it because it wasn't the next Banjo-Kazooie game, but it was so brilliant, and this looks so cute. I love
so ahead of its time.
The variety here, so
yeah, it looks awesome. And then we got
I think you said on Twitter the microtransaction potential here is insane. Like Lego already has deals with the biggest IP in the world, so I'm sure we're going to be getting the Star Wars pack and the Ghostbusters collection and all that kind of stuff.
And if you make it, you know, like a few bucks to access these, you know, this little set of extra stuff, then you could see this being the kind of thing that parents are just like, okay, $3, here you go, and blah blah blah. And
totally.
At the end of the year, you look at your bank statement, you're like, wait, we spent $2,500 on fucking Lego Bricktales this year.
Yeah, they're very cheeky like that, aren't they? But they'll make it so that you can only add X amount of dollars to your Lego wallet, and then everything that you buy is slightly less than that, so that you have some left over, and then you feel compelled to spend it. But to do that, you'll need to buy more Lego things for your wallet.
Totally. And you'll always, it's like, I've got some money left over. So actually, I only need $7, but you always need to buy $10. So
Yeah.
you always feel like you're ahead, but you're never ahead.
Yeah.
And then speaking of something that used to be ahead and is now behind, this one sucks for, I believe, Steph. Was Under the Forest on your...
I think Sons of the Forest is on my reserves.
Reserves, yeah.
Right, okay, on the Pocket League draft. They announced that the game got delayed to October, so it's not too bad. It's still coming out this year. It was supposed to be coming out in May, but they released a tweet saying that they feel they were too ambitious about the game's progress and have pushed it to October. EA Sports PGA Tour, that was on no one's list, has been delayed to next year. It was supposed to come out in early this year. It's now coming out mid next year. And finally, even though we'd had rumors of this, and we were so confident in those rumors that Pete had already scratched it off his Pocket League draft, Suicide Squad has been officially delayed from the developers. Before, it was just conjecture, but now it has been confirmed that it's been pushed to the middle of 2023. And that is literally all the video game news that happened this week.